Oh man, it's always great to beat those green guys on the road. But at the same time, that wasn't the result we expected. Cue the intro card, as you know it's that time of the month again. Hi, it's Brett Hornby again. Welcome to another My Calgary Stampeders this month. This time it's covering July 2018. This will be episode 2, season 1. After doing my first video last month, I decided I'll just break it down into season and episode. So this is the second episode of first season. Also, if you stick around until the end of the video, I'll give you my plan on how I'm going to cover the other Calgary sports teams here. So anyway, let's talk about how my Calgary Stampeders did in the month of July 2018, in the 2018 CFL season, obviously. First, I got to make one little adjustment here. This would be, set up for what's going to be talked about a lot this month. As if you watch Calgary Stampeders, defensive coordinator Devon Claybrooks seems to like to wear his hat a little slanted here, so tribute to him and our defense. I'll wear my hat slanted for this month, because this is definitely going to be talked about a lot here as I go through what's happened this past month for the Calgary Stampeders here. So coming into July, they were 3-0 with 2 wins at home and 1 on the road, and obviously first place in the West, and they were looking pretty well there. So July, week 4, they had a bye, so they didn't play yet. But then week 5, on Thursday, July the 12th, they were at TD Place Stadium in Ottawa to take it on the Ottawa RedBlacks again for the second time in 3 weeks, as they ended off June playing the Ottawa RedBlacks here at home in Calgary. And that game was definitely a defensive struggle. And Trevor Harris, I think he's having nightmares of the Calgary Stampeders as we speak. But TD Place Stadium coming in was been the kryptonite for Calgary the last couple of years, because believe it or not, they lost the last 4 times they haven't won. 2 were ties, believe it or not, against Ottawa. They tied last year and the year before. And if you include the Grey Cup in 2017, where we lost in the last couple minutes against Toronto, Calgary has not won the last 4 visits to TD Place Stadium in Ottawa. But they definitely corrected that big time as they defeated the Ottawa RedBlacks 27-3. You heard that right. 3 points, Ottawa RedBlacks. And they only got 3 points on a field goal in the first drive of the third quarter. I mean, basically, this was a defensive dominant performance. Ottawa's offense was non-existent this game. As you can, Alex Singleton is definitely the leader of the defense with all his tackles, but basically every week you got a group of 12 guys, 12 coached by Mr. Claybrooks. Maybe it's how he wears his hat slanted that inspires the team to play well on defense, but that was a completely perfect dominant performance on our defensive part. And also, a couple things happened to note of that game was that Bo Levi Mitchell, he unfortunately had a little bit of a scare there, because in the second quarter he took a little low lit by defensive line and Danny Mason of the Ottawa RedBlacks. He was able to finish the drive there, but as a precaution, given he's our star quarterback, the Calgary Stampeders decided to shut him down for the night. He was limping a little bit off the field and was able to run on the sidelines. It was all not 100% cleanly, but I would say, considering it was week 5 in the regular season and how the offense was looking for Calgary, and definitely their defense, that they were able to afford to put in Nick Arbuckle for the second half of the game and give him some meaningful reps, as you never know where if you ever need a backup quarterback, just asked our current quarterback coach, Ryan Dinwiddie, what it was like to have your first career start at the championship game in 2007 when he was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But I would highlight that Nick Arbuckle actually looked pretty well considering he's been kicking around and he didn't know who was going to be the backup quarterback here for the Stampeders after, Andrew Buckley decided to retire to pursue his medical career at the University of Calgary, and we let Ricky Stanzi go, but he was 8 for 14 for 84 yards and threw a touchdown to Lamar Durant. I mean, he looked pretty average. I mean, he managed the game. He didn't make any stupid decisions, and he made the right decisions and managed the game well to keep up our defensive efforts. So I'm going to say kudos to Nick Arbuckle for being able to step in and keep the team going in the right direction, and maybe we found ourselves a backup quarterback that we can count on if we're ever in a pinch later in the season. Hopefully not with Bo Levi Mitchell, but you never know. You got to be prepared, especially the way how quarterbacks have gotten hurt in the CFL this year. And the other thing we can highlight is that our running back, Don Jackson, he had 15 carries for 102 yards, and he's definitely been a find for the Stampeders this year. So that was the Calgary Stampeders and Ottawa RedBlacks for Week 5, and barring meeting again in the playoffs, we're done with the Ottawa RedBlacks this season, and Trevor Harris is probably okay with that. So then Week 6, Calgary went back home at McMahon Stadium to play the Montreal Alouettes, and coming into that game, felt like it was a trap game. I mean, the Montreal Alouettes are still in their lean time right now. They're still trying to find their identity at the time, and with their high-powered offense, hopefully this is one of your classic trap games to look ahead to the schedule where we start playing some West opponents. And I'm going to say that they definitely had their best game at home so far this season, but they didn't look as strong as they could be the first 2 home games in June if you go back to that video. But they did actually beat the Montreal Alouettes 25-8, and I'll summarize that our offense definitely looked strong in the first half, and our defense held Montreal to 8 points at all that game. I mean, Montreal, credit to them, considering that they're still struggling right now, and I mean, you can also, being at the end of the month, they actually made a big move that you could see that video on that big move they made, but Montreal has a solid defense, and the big issue with Montreal is they need to build up their offense so their defense is not out for the whole game, and I give credit to Montreal. They definitely came out to play, and we still won and had our best offensive game. I mean, Eric Rogers and Kamar Jordan both had touchdowns, and I say that right now that's our top 2 receivers, as once I get after the last game I'll go over some numbers since we are done the first quarter of the season. But to highlight a couple things that happened in the Montreal game is that Bo Levi Mitchell actually is now second all-time in passing yards at the Calgary Stampeders, as he passed Doug Flutie, who I personally think was the best quarterback to ever play in the CFL. This is just Calgary Stampeder numbers, but Bo Levi Mitchell is also solidifying himself and putting his names up there in the all-time greats and quarterbacks who ever played in the CFL. I mean, the one thing I actually forgot to mention from the Ottawa game, that even though he did not finish the game, he started the game, and that was his 60th win as a starter in the CFL, and he's done that in 72 games. So he was 60-10-2 at that time as a starter in the CFL, and he's actually the fastest quarterback to achieve 60 wins in the fewest starts. The other guys that they highlighted, I remember, was Kenny Payne, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers legend. I believe he got his 60th win in 78 games, and I know Jackie Parker, the Edmonton Eskimos legend, did it in 79 games. So Bo Levi Mitchell, the fastest quarterback in CFL history to win 60 starts. But he also now has the second all-time lead in passing yards, only behind Smiling Hank Henry Burris. So he achieved that in that game. And then I'll make a video about this guy to have my Calgary Legends. I made fittingly that same week that Jerome McGinley decides to retire from the NHL. I say the best receiver, only behind Alan Pitts, Nick Lewis, decided it was time to retire and signed a one-day contract. And finally, he decided to do that ahead of the Montreal game because he played for the Montreal Alouettes for well. But he did sign for the one-day contract to retire as a Calgary Stampeders and made his appearance at the game. And I'll be making my Nick Lewis video after this video. So, like I said, the second half, our defense was dominant to hold Montreal to 8 points. And the big individual number is that Eric Rogers, he had 9 catches for 113 yards and 1 touchdown. And I'd say it's been a beautiful day in the neighborhood, as Mr. Rogers sang over the years, and it's always been a beautiful day since Eric Rogers has come back to the CFL and come back to the red and white. Keep in mind he's wearing number 15 now because Mark Michel had his original number 80, but I don't think he cares. He still has picked up where he's left off, and quite impressed considering 3 years ago he led the league in CFL receiving and then tried his luck in the NFL and had to, undergo knee injuries, never had his chance in the NFL, so I think it's pretty good considering it's been 3 years. So the last game, this one definitely had a lot of hype. First Western opponent, and the fact that the Saskatchewan Roughriders is opponent. So week 7 on Saturday, July the 28th, they made their first visit to Saskatchewan. Keep in mind, this will be one of the teams that will play 3 times this season. The Saskatchewan Roughriders will go there twice this season, and then the other team will play 3 times as the BC Lions, where they'll make 2 visits here in Calgary, as I'll go over after I go through all the games here. But they definitely went to Saskatchewan for the first time, and they wound up winning the game 34-22. But definitely, if you followed that game, you would have been surprised it was 34-22. Because the Calgary Stampeders coming in, definitely in the first quarter, they went up to a quick 24-0 lead, where Saskatchewan had turnovers and a couple turnovers that Calgary had short fields and took advantage of that, and also a punt return for a touchdown by Terry Williams. Can easily give you a quick 24-0 lead. But credit to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who definitely still fed off of their home crowd. That they scored 19 straight points, and at one time it was 24-19. And then in the second half, Bo Levi Mitchell drove Calgary down for a touchdown with DeVaris Daniels. And then we had a field goal from Rene Paredes. But keep in mind, even though it was 34-22, their defense did not allow a touchdown. It was actually a pick 6 that Saskatchewan scored their only touchdown on, and then they had 5 field goals, so that's where they got their 22 points. But overall, this actually whole game was a defensive struggle for both sides. It's just Calgary capitalized when given the opportunity, and that's what great teams do, is they take advantage of their opponents when they're down and capitalize and cash it in when it's available. And definitely was another dominant defense, and up to this point, after 6 games, the Calgary Stampeders have only allowed 68 points. 68. That's insane for the CFL. We're up there in record territory, and in terms of the 1964 BC Lions, where they only averaged 9 points a game, and that was a different era back then. And the lowest score team that had the best defense was the 1971 Calgary Stampeders. They only allowed on average 12 points a game, so they're on that pace right now. And they won the Grey Cup that year. So yeah, we're 6-0 right now going into August, and obviously we're number 1 in the West and overall in the CFL, which is looking good right now, but we're only a third of the way there till playoffs and the big game in Edmonton. So now I looked at the league numbers here, since I feel I'll start showing out some numbers here after every month, since enough of a season is played that we can gauge some trends here. But Bo Levi Mitchell is 115. He's completed 115 to 172 passes. He has 1,517 yards passing, which is good for number 3 in the league, only behind Jeremiah Mazzoli, and right now Mike Rowley up in Edmonton is he's once again maintaining his torrid pace that he had last season, where he threw for over 5,700 yards. And the big thing about Bo Levi Mitchell, he has passed for 12 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, which he's always maintained that great ratio. And although I don't quite fully get the efficiency, but that also tells you how great the quarterback is when he's played. But he's actually 108.1, and that's actually exactly tied with Mike Rowley when I looked at the stats. So Bo Levi Mitchell is being himself, which is always a good thing for Calgary Stampeder fans. And then for rushing, Don Jackson, he has 68 carries. He has 442 yards. Unfortunately, he actually missed the game last night, but he's still 3rd in the league in rushing with 442 yards, only behind William Powell for the Ottawa RedBlacks and Andrew Harris, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And right now the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are the top rushing team in the league. So, which he also is averaging 6.5 yards a carry, which is pretty good, and he had 1 run for 70 yards, which I believe that was the run that he had against the Hamilton Tiger Cats dome opener. Then when it comes to receivers, our top receiver is Kamar Jordan. He has 395 yards and 32 catches, which is good for number 7 in the league with a 12.3 average, and he has caught 3 touchdowns. And then going back to Eric Rogers here, I'm going to look at the top 15 and highlight any stats from there. But Eric Rogers in 21 receptions, he has 329 yards, which is good for 11th in the league. But he is tied for 1st with Duke Williams with 5 touchdowns. So he's definitely still enjoying his time in his neighborhood, as they say. And then the last receiver that's in the top 15 in the league right now is Devers Daniels. In 24 receptions, he has 329 yards, which is 12th in the league, or tied for 11th if you look at yards with Eric Rogers. Now, if you go on defense, we got two guys that are in the top 15 in tackles. Alf Singleton has 39 tackles, which is good for number 5 in the league. Well, he's definitely, you're always going to count on him being in the top 5 or even top 3 up there with, mind you, with Solomon Elamini and Hurt in BC. It's wide open who's going to have the most tackles this season. And then Jameer Thurman has 30 tackles, and he's right at number 15, and he's definitely established himself as one of the top defensive tackles in the league with our group of 12 coached by Mr. Claybrooks here. And then let's look at our kickers. Rene Paredes is actually still Mr. Accurate. He's made 14 to 15 field goals, good for 93.3%, and he had the longest one, which was 52 yards. The only guy that is ahead of him in accuracy is Lewis Ward, who has 95%, while yesterday, the game earlier, he had a 7 for 7 day, which that definitely helps his number. But Lewis Ward at the Ottawa RedBlacks is definitely showing you can be an accurate kicker too. And the other thing with Rene Paredes, he's actually 14 for 14 on point after, which is definitely promising to show that we can rely on our kicker still. And Rene Paredes has definitely been one of the top kickers in the league since he's come in. And then for interceptions, both Brandon Smith and Emmanuel Davis have 2 interceptions each. Kevin Fogg is the only guy for Winnipeg that leads the league with 3, but there's a lot of guys with 2 interceptions, so, and then we have 2 of them right now. And then when it comes to punt returns, Terry Williams is actually 3rd in the league, and he has 376 yards, and already, including last night, he has 2 touchdowns on punt returns. So one of the question marks coming into this season, how Calgary will do without Roy Finch. Well, I think we're doing pretty well with Terry Williams back there as our returner. And then we'll talk about Rob Maver. He's always looked at being one of our steady punters in the league. The only stats I find I can really highlight is that he's 44.1 yard punting average, is good for number 5 in the league. But Rob Maver, he's always been the solid punter since being drafted in 2010, and you know, he could pin you deep if you have to within 10 yards of the coffin corner. So that's all I have for Calgary Stampeders in July. But let's look ahead to the schedule here in August to give you an idea that schedule is starting to ramp up here, because we're playing Western opponents now, and the consensus are, and so far we've seen that the East is a little weaker than the West once again this year. So looking ahead in August here, for Week 8 on Saturday, August the 4th, we'll be playing the BC Lions right here at McMahon Stadium. That game starts at 7 o'clock. And then Week 9, the Calgary Stampeders have their second bye week of the season. So Week 10, which will be on Sunday, August the 19th, they go back to Saskatchewan at Mosaic Stadium, play the Roughriders again, you know, say hello to Charleston Hughes and Jerome Messam again. And I should also mention that Charleston Hughes definitely got to say hello to Bo Levi Mitchell on the field a couple times with a couple sacks. I mean, he's definitely, individually, he's leading the league in sacks, but our defense collectively is definitely outpacing that. And also our takeaway, we're leading the league in definitely takeaways, which all goes back to capitalizing on their opportunities. And that game on Sunday, August 19th, will start at 5 o'clock. This is Mountain Time. I'm in the Mountain Time zone. And then the last game in August, Week 11 ahead of Labor Day, the Calgary Stampeders on Saturday, August the 25th, will be back home at McMahon Stadium to play the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And that game starts at 1:30. So that's a wrap on the Calgary Stampeders, how they looked so far in July. And right now we're 6-0, and that's the schedule looking up for August. Anyway, as I mentioned at the start of the video, my plan for covering the other teams there is that throughout the CFL season, I'll do my Calgary Stampeders this month up until the end of the season, and I'll plan to do a playoff primers, which I'll cover the playoffs for the CFL, the 3 weeks that happens before the Grey Cup. But then my plan for the Calgary Roughnecks is that, like the Calgary Stampeders, they play a game once every week. So I'll do my Calgary Roughnecks this month. I'll cover them, you know, every month during the NLL season. And then for the Flames and Hitmen, my plan is that I'll do 6-game segments. I'll call it my Calgary Flames in 6 or my Calgary Hitmen in 6. And how to make the math work is that in the Western Hockey League, actually this season, they're only going to play 68 games this year. So I'll figure out from games, every 6-game segment, I'll do up to 60 games. I'll do that 10 my Calgary Hitmen in 6, plus 2 my Calgary Hitmen in 4. And then for the Calgary Flames, they still play 82 games in the NHL. So every 6 games works up to 78 games, and then I'll do my Calgary Flames in 4. So that's my plan for how I'm going to follow the other sports teams once hockey and lacrosse season comes. And then the last thing I'll mention is that most CFL fans believe that the real season doesn't start until after Labor Day. And my plan is that just before Labor Day, I'm going to revisit my predictions video that I made at the start of the year. And already I see I'm going to have to make some adjustments on predictions, especially in the East Division, who I figure could be going to Edmonton this year for the big game. So anyway, if you enjoy everything I do covering my sports and my scenery videos, you can hit like and subscribe and follow my content. And I'll see you in the next video, and I'll see you next month, the end of August, for how the Calgary Stampeders do in August.